Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good
Hi,
to see
Chris.
you again.
Good to see you again.
How is are you still on the
I'm
on
on the
vacation?
Cape. Yes, you can,
Yes,
yeah.
I am not. I am in Texas and
I'm not on
we'll
the I
try
would
to not
rather
be.
be in Texas at the moment. We're not having good weather in the UK. Summer is like a washout.
Really, man, it's hard not to still envy it because it's so hot.
No, I was there. I was
Yes,
there not that long
All I
ago.
can say is that I washed my hair and rolled it with hot rollers today an hour ago.
and
And
it's doing that beach thing.
so I tried. I tried really hard. We call this Cape hair don't care.
I
But was
love.
there like really bad weather in Houston? Because I know another author had to cancel their book tour visit or
Yes,
something because they couldn't
we're
fly there.
about 3 hours from Houston, so it actually we usually when a hurricane comes in, we usually will get good rain. Of course,
Hmm.
nothing compared to a hurricane, but it really skipped us on it. We got like a little bit of rain, and
Oh.
it skipped us, and we haven't had anything. But I think there's still flooding down there for sure.
I think
So
there's a million people without power and it's triple digits. So
Wow.
you went to Houston at the right time. But next time, Chris, you need to come to Waco. We have better weather.
yes,
Okay, I definitely will. I
Are
can't
you
wait to come
are
back.
you so you're
Next,
back in England?
I'm back in England. I'm launching the book next week. On Tuesday, I tour around the UK till Sunday. Then I fly back to the US on Monday.
Do you have is there a U in the colors of the dart for the UK version?
Is there a what? Sorry.
Colors, do you spell it with a U for the UK?
Yeah, we
oh,
do. Yeah,
good
yeah.
question.
I know. And now it looks too big when I look at it because I'm used to spelling it the US way.
You
Now
know,
it's
you
like,
don't
why
need
is the
that
U?
letter.
No,
That's just an American telling you. You don't need
I'm
it.
with you. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, we eliminate things. British taxes, use.
British monarchy.
That's
We
right.
celebrated
Although
that.
I'm sad about that. I love a good British monarchy. I would have loved a queen
You would
over
have
here.
thrived.
I really would have.
I like it. I like having a royal family. Loads of people don't in the UK.
Yes.
I would
This
love it. We love the Royals.
we do. We really just need to have an event based on the royals because we're obsessed. Also, I'm obsessed with royals in Europe in general. I'm like, yeah, I love Kate, but there's also other
There's some
royals,
really good ones like
and
Norway.
they are
They have a
very
really
good.
glamorous queen. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
With you. So
Whereas
what
the
do you think of Prince Harry over there in the US?
um
Like Meghan? Is that a
I
thing?
I would say, okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb. General opinion is that we're not happy with him or Megan. I think
Okay.
that we wanted them to play nice. Of course, I mean his book was amazing, and I have compassion for him.
Hmm.
But and
He's like
he
the Yoko Ono.
yes, wow,
Okay.
that's very
Interesting.
good. What is your impression of Harry and Meghan over?
Uh, generally the press weren't very kind to them, but I quite like them. And I admire it, just walking away like that. I think it's a brave thing. I've always quite liked Harry though.
Yes, he's with the naughty one is what
He is the naughty one, yeah. I can
So
relate.
you
Yeah,
like the bad boy, right?
I do. Everyone does.
Yeah.
that's true. Well, we'll go ahead and start. I love seeing we have a few people here we're not normally here on the lunch hour, which is so fun that everyone is showing up. But I mean, a book to show up for sure. That makes it an easy one. But if you're new here, welcome to Fabled's Book Club. We are so excited to welcome back Chris Whitaker. I feel like it was maybe 2020, no, 2020, I think when we had you first. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
I had to ask, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
How did you say it? I didn't
I
even
said
notice.
Whitaker, but then I looked
Yeah,
at it and I was like,
yeah.
sounds correct.
I know if you
Um,
look at it too long, you wonder, is it
Me
yes.
too.
I
Whitaker
think, does it
or
need a U in it? No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. No.
But we're so glad to welcome you back. I mean, your book, We Begin at the End, was one of our favorites. This one did not disappoint. I'm so excited. If you are here and you have a question for Chris, we have questions ourselves. We may even ask some of the ones you might have, but feel free to put it in the chat, or you can put it in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to it. Also, this is spoilers abound here. This is beginning to the end of the book. So if you're not finished, please be mindful of that.
This is
Um,
the first time I've ever got to do this.
is
Ever got to talk
we
Oh,
about
have
the full book.
heard that authors love that. They're like, oh, thank goodness, because I
Yeah.
don't have to watch my words on anything. Yeah, we get to just throw it all out there. This will be recorded, so if you are currently reading the book, haven't finished it, you feel free to exit and watch the recording later. It'll come in your email about 24 hours from now, I think. And at the very end, we'll introduce our next book club. And we actually, this month is so fun because we actually have 2 books, and they're both, I'm calling it like the lunch series, I guess, where they're both going to be during the noon hour. And then we'll also introduce our August book club. So I will, without further ado, let Elizabeth formally introduce Chris.
All right, so today we have Chris Whitaker with us. He is the award-winning author of Tall Oaks, All the Wicked Girls, We Begin at the End, and The Forevers, which is YA. His debut, Tall Oaks, won the CWA John Creasy New Blood Dagger Award. An instant New York Times and international bestseller, We Begin at the End, which we were huge proponents of from the very beginning, was a Waterstones Thriller of the Month, a Barnes & Noble Club pick, and a Good Morning America buzz pick. The novel won the CWA Gold Dagger Award, the Theakston Crime Novel of the Year, the Ned Kelly International Award, and numerous other awards around the world. We Begin at the End has been translated into 29 languages, with screen rights going to Disney, where Hamilton director Thomas Kyle,
Yeah.
and producing partner Jennifer Todd will develop a book for television. Chris lives in the UK. And I have to say, I picked up We Begin at the End several years ago, totally fell in love with it. It was the first indie press pick for a book club of 2,000 women that I kind of introduced that group to this book, and it's just still haunted me. That book to me is like a lifetime favorite book. So we're so thrilled that you had a new book out, and I'm sure it would be, I can't imagine how hard it would be to follow up with that, but somehow it was even better than We Begin at the End, which it's hard for me to even say because I loved it so much. But anyway, and I got to see Chris last week in Massachusetts, so it's really fun that was really fun to see you live and to hear your interview, and now we get to do that for our Fabled group. So welcome, Chris. We're so thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much. An Unlikely Story was amazing, wasn't it? The bookshop.
I love there's 3 bookstores in the country that I dearly love. Of course, Fabled being number 1, but An Unlikely Story is right up there. It's fantastic.
I went up to the top floor and had a look, and it's
Isn't it
where the
amazing?
magic happens. It's amazing up there. It's Jeff Kinney's like office, and it's huge, and yeah, it's just really cool. And it's and
they
there
have
was
all
like
the
a pad.
Diary of a Wimpy Kids in every single language. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I brought my son back a signed first edition, and he was like over the moon. It's like the best present he's ever got.
That's awesome. Well, let's start with the big question, from me at least. I'd love to hear where you got the idea for this book.
So I had a really simple kind of top line pitch, which was 2 abducted teenagers fall in love in a pitch black basement. They're being held in, having never seen each other. The boy escapes and can't find his way back to the girl. And that was kind of it. That was the core idea that I had. And I was changing publishers at the time. And so my agent sent out like basically 1 or 2 lines longer than I've just given to you. And then people were interested in buying it off of that, and kind of off of the back of We Begin at the End, which hadn't actually come out yet, but lots of people have read it in the UK, like in the industry. And then so from there it evolved into something massive, because it was like I was gonna do what I did in We Begin at the End. I was going to take a year in the life of Duchess in that book, but I was going to expand it, in that kind of detail where you know the character as well as you know Duchess. But if I could do it over like 25 years, I thought it would be fascinating to watch a child go through trauma and then follow them into adulthood and see how that affects them along the way.
Well, I know at the event at Unlikely Story, you talked about something that made the entire group just gasp with your writing process. Can you talk about that a little bit specifically? I know you said that you spent the first year just writing dialogue between the 2 main characters. Can you talk about how the book came to be?
Yes, and Hank, who was moderating, was horrified, wasn't she? She's an author. She was like absolutely horrified. Like it's the worst
Everyone
way
was
to
like,
write.
what? So I thought we need to let our group know about your crazy writing process.
Yeah, but now when I explain it, I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds because so I spend the first year writing dialogue. Mostly for this one, it was probably the first 6 months was just patch and sane. But I always think like, how do you get to know the people in your life? So if you take your partner or your friends, how did you get to know them? It was through conversation, and it was really interesting to me what people choose to hold back and what people offer up, and they offer up a side of themselves that you kind of want to see. And that's what happens in the book. Patch and Saint meet each other when they're really young, and Patch kind of has this bolshy, almost arrogant side to him, and that's what he chooses to show to Saint. And Saint is kind of desperate for a friend, so she takes it, and she begins, and then they both begin to warm up to each other and learn about each other, and they learn the things that they've been hiding. Patch has a difficult home life. He lives with a mum that's not really capable of looking after him, and Saint finds that out over months, and years of being his friend. And then in turn, Patch finds out about Saint, that she lives with her grandmother, that her mum died shortly after giving birth to her. And so it was these conversations. And I wrote, it's not just like straight dialogue, they'll be in a scene. So they might be walking somewhere or going towards something. So you'll get a feel for the town. And then year two, I begin to write scenes, not in the right order as well, which also horrified Hank, but kind of like how they film, TV. So I'll write scenes that I want to write. So I started fairly early on with Patch and Grace in the basement because I knew that those scenes would be difficult. So I'd spend like a month writing that, then go and write something lighter, like a Sammy scene. Then I come back to the basement, write some more, and kind of go back and forth. So it never got too intense or too heavy and difficult to write. And then in year three, it begins to look like a book. I'll begin to piece it all together and then look at continuity and pacing and things like that. And then year four, editors come in and fix the big mess that I've made.
I love it.
Is that weird? What do other authors say?
It's fascinating. I mean, I guess I've never written anything, but that seems fascinating to me. And I love the idea of writing their dialogue just for an entire year. To think that's the job, but everyone does it differently. We always love to ask that question, but yours is unique. Maybe not crazy, just unique.
Yeah, it does sound a bit crazy when I say that. Because it was a long time, I think. I think that it was supposed to, like, I was supposed to deliver a first draft in a year instead of 3 years. So it clearly got away from me throughout the writing process. But it's a really big book.
And I've got to say, maybe this is your publishers don't want to hear it, but as booksellers, we kind of like, I like a 3 year. 3 years is nice.
Yeah.
Because, I think sometimes when you do that 1 year contract, it's maybe not as inspired. It's more about just getting it out in the world. And
well, yeah, I could never do that. Yeah, it would be like, I'd rather no one read it. I absolutely categorically would refuse to deliver anything that isn't the best that I can do. And I think they knew that when I signed with them. And the same with the US, I moved with Amy, my editor, because she was at Henry Holt before, who published We Begin at the End, and then she went to Penguin, and luckily I was able to go with her. So she kind of knew my process and knew that it'd take ages. And at no point did anyone like pressure me or there was just like constant support throughout the whole thing. And I think that is the way to get the best story out of an author.
I agree.
When Elizabeth told me about that, because it was so fascinating to hear about just how you write the characters' dialogue and sitting with them for so long. And when I read, I love to like pick, other references of characters or movie actors and cast them in the book. Like at first for Saint, I was like, oh, this is Scout. This is Scout. And then I was like, no, it's 11 from Stranger Things, which of course made me want to cast Nyx as Hopper. I don't know if you're a fan of Stranger.
Yeah, I had that a lot.
And then with all the pirate talk, Patch grown up was Johnny Depp to me, like a young Johnny Depp. I wondered if when you're sitting with those characters for so long, if they start to really like, I guess, have facial features to you or really round themselves out and you base them. people.
Yeah, like massively. Like I can see them. As soon as I start writing the book, like by year 2, after I've done the dialogue, stuff like that, I generally start with what they look like. And I'll
Mhm.
describe them, not in huge detail, but fairly early on, so that a reader can have a rough idea. So you're not kind of going in completely blind. But interestingly, I got the pilot episode today to read. I know, it's the first
Really?
time. Yeah, I've been waiting for it for ages. Because I went and met Jenna Bush Hager in Aspen, and she told me there was a pilot, a finished pilot, and that was the first time I'd found. I knew that they were working on it, but then I've been waiting since then, so another 2 weeks, and then it arrived this morning, and yeah,
Wow.
it's really,
Are you
really,
pleased with what you
really
have seen?
pleased. Yeah, really, really pleased. It's
We're gonna address that in a little bit. I know that's one of
mhm.
our questions because that was a fun part of that conversation too. But
Yes.
speaking of Jenna, we'd like to talk about that little circle on your book. That first, and just interestingly, her family ranch is about 20 minutes from where Allison and I live. So she comes to Waco. I would love, you need to let her know to come to Fabled because
Well, I'm gonna
Waco,
tell her.
they're very close with their yeah, I know she got married right by our house. But what has that been like? What was that call like? Were you surprised? What has that added to your book tour? And I have a
Um,
question, and I know this may be it may be hard to answer, but do you like having that circle on the book cover?
I really like having the circle. It's really, really cool. I really I was kind of blown away and still am and still can't quite believe it, that it was picked because the competition is fierce for those book club slots. And it didn't just feel like that they thought that it would be, a good fit or it would sell well. They were genuinely, like Jenna and the team was so into the book from the very beginning. Like they read it a good year before it was ready, like properly ready and finished. And so I had a Zoom with them. Um I think it was a year ago. It was about a year ago, yeah, maybe last summer, and then found out not that long after our first meeting that they were considering it, and then found out fairly quickly after that. But you absolutely categorically cannot tell anyone, and, which is really tough because obviously I wanted to tell people, but I took it really seriously, and the US like the publishers take it really seriously as well. But she's just been the biggest, most amazing champion of the book. Like I watched her because I can't see the Today Show in the UK, but so everyone records bits of it, when she's talking about the book and emails it to me, and I have to kind of pinch myself that she's talking about my book.
Yeah, I
It's
think
just
she said it's one of the best books she's ever read or something.
yeah, yeah,
And she's a big reader, so that's huge.
yeah, it is, and you can tell when she's talking about it. Like we did a couple of events in Aspen, and just her kind of face lights up, and she's talking, and she's just like, I wish I could bring her around to all the bookshops and all the readers and just let her sell the book because
Yeah,
there's no one better.
that's awesome. Well, reading this book and of course being an American and being familiar with landscapes in America, how as a Brit do you do that so well? As far as, is it intimidating to write places in America? Do
I
people
think
approach you or at any point?
people are mostly kind. I think that you have to get it kind of bang on because like if someone from the US was writing London, I would go over it. I'd probably focus twice as hard. But no, readers have been really kind and really cool. And if I am making mistakes, it's on me, and it kind of hasn't gotten away of the story, or I haven't noticed, or people haven't noticed it or flagged it particularly. I've had issues with the fact that I make up the town and put it down somewhere real. That means wherever it's being dropped down, it's kind of taking the place of something else. So occasionally I get people telling me, that isn't there or something like that. And sometimes people will message me to tell me that, that a certain road isn't where it is in the book and it's a fictional town. And I never have the heart to go back and tell them because I don't want to embarrass anyone. But I think that's what I mean. Like people are quite passionate, aren't they, about where they live, and quite rightly so. So it's my job. I have a responsibility to get it right. But as for how I get it right, it's a painstaking slow, agonizing process over years. And I was working in a library for a big chunk of writing this book, and I used that like library resources. I used maps and travel guides and non-fiction, fiction, TV show, documentaries, things like that, just to begin to piece together what this area looked like in the 70s. And then obviously it spans so long, you have to go through all these historical moments without it feeling too heavy-handed, which is also, you know, that's what I tend to overwrite and then cut back, because I think that's the only way around that, you know. And we do a really brutal edit, really brutal couple of cuts, you know, towards the end. Like my editor will say we need to lose 10,000 words, and then we need to lose another 10,000 words, and then it keeps getting whittled down and down until it's, you know, it kind of feels, to me, it feels really sparse by the end of it. And I think it's all the better for that. I mean, it couldn't be much longer, could it? It's already a chunky one.
Well, you are, you know, a whole lifetime pretty much of these characters, so it's hard to cut, I would imagine.
It is, but yeah, there's two different ways of doing it. Interestingly, this is the first time I'd ever done it, and you can just go through the book and try and cut a word from each line, or 2 words from each paragraph. And it's amazing how many thousands of words you can cut, you know, that are there that probably don't need to be there. But then obviously I pull them out, and then the copy editor will tell me that it's incorrect grammatically and things like that, because I've lost something like crucial. But we muddle our way through and get there in the end.
I think I would love that job, to whittle down a book. That's my next dream job after bookseller.
Yeah, I think you'd be a really good editor.
I would love it. Just get it, power sentences. But I wanted to say I'm in a book group talking, and they were talking about this book, and she's from Kansas, started in Kansas City, Missouri, and just said, you know, we don't get a whole lot of books set in our area. We're kind of in the flyover zone. So it really meant a lot to her that the book was set in Missouri, because that's kind of there's just not a ton of books set in Missouri, other than I guess Mark Twain books. But
yeah, I didn't actually know that fact until after I'd written the book, spent years writing it, and then I met with the TV people for the first time, and they said, you know, it's really timely. We need a book set in this, a story set in this area, and I had no real idea.
Were you kind of like, exactly, of
yes,
course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, bang on. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was a great segue, because I wanted to talk to you about the movie rights, and how does that go about? And I know you told some interesting stories about kind of vetting different movie groups, and
Yeah.
and do you have any artistic control whatsoever? And I would love for you to kind of expand on that.
I do. Yeah, I do have some it feels like a group effort. So I have an exec producer, which isn't just like a title only. So I get to read the script now, you know, the pilot, and then give notes on it and things like that. And I'm used to being edited, so to edit someone else is not coming naturally to me or easily. But to answer your question, so the book went out maybe a year and a bit ago, when it was still an uncorrected kind of proof stage. You know, there was still continuity issues, things like that. And it went out quite early because it was the strike, you know, in Hollywood. And we made the decision to, or my film agent made the decision to send it out, because people had time to read, you know, unusually, like everyone was kind of sitting around waiting. And so once that was done, I flew over to New York and met with loads of studios, which was really interesting, because I thought that I was going to be pitching the book to them, but it was actually them pitching me and pitching their ideas for the book, which was really interesting, because they all kind of see it in different ways. And some of them are like, I really agree with it, bang on. And some of them are like, I can't believe you're going to do this to my book. So, but I understand that it needs to live in you know, in a different guise, and I'm not precious about it, but I need to know that kind of we're on the same page, especially about the characters. And so I met with quite a few, and everyone was really kind. But I'd met with Jenna and her production team, and then I met with Sue Nagel, who was used to be the boss at HBO for years, like when they did Game of Thrones and things like that. So she was really like, there's no one more capable. And then Sarah Gubbins, a writer who wrote Pam and Tommy and some other stuff, and I really liked her. And so I wondered if all of them could, get together and do it, and they did, which was really fortunate because I asked the question, but my film agent was thinking the same thing and thought it would be like a dream team if we could get them to work together with Universal, and we did, and now the pilots arrived, and it clearly has paid off. So.
Well, I was laughing at that event because I think you had said, well, I'm not going to say who the casting is, but if you can all guess. And of course, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I have absolutely no idea. But I was like, oh my gosh, I wish Allison were here because Allison is so good at casting.
I
So
should have prepared myself. For casting. I mean,
there's people in the frame, I think, that they like for Saint, particularly for Saint, and there's some directors that have approached them that have read the book, which is really cool. But I'm never allowed to talk about it. Like
oh,
that.
I did think of Jessica Chastain as the adult Saint.
Okay,
So,
she'd be a really good Saint. She would be a really good Saint. Yeah, but I think you need two, and then you need the teenage Saint as well.
right, you need the teenage one, which I don't know if I'm familiar with enough with kid actors that would.
No, same. But I'm sure that there are hugely talented actresses just waiting to be Saint.
That's waiting. Well, this is kind of another research question, but there's so many hobbies. Well, not so many, but like very specific hobbies in this book. Painting, beekeeping, and you go in such like detail about them. How do you know these hobbies yourself, or did you do research?
No, I don't have any interest in any of them really. I
Oh
think
my-
people assume that I share like the hobbies of my characters, but no, like it just they're obviously of interest to me, particularly art. Patch becomes a painter in the book, as you know. I can't believe we can just talk about everything that
Do
happens
it.
in the book.
You can just talk about everything.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just really cool. And so I spent a long time researching art and painting and the technique behind it. And then I did the same for mining because Patch becomes a miner for like a single paragraph. And then I did the same for ballet because Grace talks about ballet, and then fishing. And it was just endless, really. And but they're the kind of things that make up the characters, aren't they? If you think about all your friends and all their different interests, you wouldn't necessarily know as much as they do about their interests. You just know like they're into fishing or something. But then if you're in their head or you're writing from their perspective, you need to know it inside out, because even their throwaway lines will be factually kind of completely correct. So it was kind of an easier part of research, which I quite enjoyed. Because I like to learn new things, but I forget most of it now as well. So on the flight over back to the US, I read the book again because I hadn't read it for like 6 months or something, and I thought someone's going to think that I haven't written the book because it's such a big book.
Funny.
Yeah, because
would
it's
that
such a
be
big
funny
book.
if someone was like, that's a really great book, and you're like, I know, I wrote it.
Yeah.
That's the dream, though.
Or
Someone who
it's
knows who you are, and then they see you reading your own book. That has to be like weird.
yeah, mortifying. That would
That's
be
so embarrassing.
Yeah, but I think as well someone's going to bring something up that I've forgotten, and I'm going to be really surprised by it. But it's something that I should know. That's definitely going to happen at some point.
I love it.
I am thinking it would be funny just to have you an art show, and then you be able to go into this like very detailed description about painting, and someone says, "Oh, do you like to paint?" And you say, "No, I'd have no interest in that."
Yeah,
And
nothing.
having no
That's all.
reference for who you are or why
Yeah.
you.
But more likely, I'll get it completely wrong, and they'll just think this guy's a complete idiot. He thinks he knows
And
what
then
he's
you're like, "Well, it's in print, so I
Yeah,
can't do
joke's
anything."
on you. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit. I know we talked about this 3 years ago, last time we talked, and I'd love to talk about it a little bit more today. The last two books have really focused on trauma as with children. And I mean, one of them, of course, that We Begin at the End was more of a younger child, and this is kind of the span of a lifetime. But can you talk about how was this your way of processing trauma yourself? And I know I loved your story. I still think about what your therapist said about writing to change the ending and kind of getting a hold of your power again. Can you kind of tell our listeners a little bit about that and why that's such an important part of your books?
Yeah, so where it came from. So I started with Patch because I was similar to Patch. You know, I went through something nowhere nearly as bad, but kind of similar. And so when I was 10, my parents divorced when I was really little, and then my mum was dating someone that was a bit of a drinker and quite rough when he was drinking. And he hadn't been like rough with me. I just saw signs of a temper. So I knew to kind of be quiet and be, you know, as a kid, you know, to be on guard, you know, if someone's around you. And so I was always kind of quite tense when this guy was around. But I was asleep one night and he came into my room and pulled me out of bed and broke my arm. And I obviously I knew it was broken because I heard it, and he knew it was broken because he'd heard it. But he told me to go back to my room, and obviously I needed help. But I went back to my room because he was really angry about it, and he told me to be quiet. And so I had this really long night as a 10-year-old where I couldn't get any help until the morning, and I couldn't cry or anything or make any noise because he was getting really angry. So that was the basis for Patches, you know, and then I extended it with him held in the basement. But it was kind of similar, you know, if you call out, no one is there to help you. And then the next day I told my parents that I had done it playing football, and only they only found out the truth about it not that long ago, you know, like very recently. So that's how good I was at just keeping quiet about things. And I looked back at my life now. You know, when I started writing, I was like 38, and I looked back over my life at the bad things that had happened, and I tracked them all the way back to that night, because I got stabbed when I was a teenager because I wouldn't give someone my cell phone because I think I didn't want to feel like a victim like I was when I was 10. So even when the guy pulled out a knife, I just flat out refused to give it. You know, it didn't enter my head that I wouldn't fight this person even though he had a knife, you know, and I'd just keep swinging. And to my own detriment, because I had a really tough time after that, you know, with PTSD. And I could have spared myself that had I just handed over my phone, which is what most people would probably do. And I was doing radio actually in Ireland the other day in Dublin, and the guy asked me, he said to me, "What would you do if it happened again now?" You know, and I said I probably wouldn't give my phone to the person. And he was like horrified by it and just didn't really get it. And I thought at that point, you don't really understand what I'm saying, because it wasn't a choice. It was just this innate thing. I didn't stand there and think I'm choosing not to give you my phone. It just wasn't an option. And I don't think you ever know how you're going to react until that sort of thing happens, until, you know, you find yourself in trouble. And it's definitely not bravery, you know, like, because I wouldn't consider myself brave, or I think my friends did at the time. You know, they slapped me on the back and was like, you know, it's in the kind of way that men do sometimes. And then worked in the city and have talked about losing loads of money, and I did because I think that it was an accident. You know, I lost $2 million, and it sounds funny, like it was an accident because I didn't really know what I was doing. But instead of asking for help, which would have got me out of most of the trouble that I was in, I kept my mouth shut again, and chose not to ask for help, and tried to get myself out of it, which made it a million times worse, and illegal as well on top of that. But it's these kind of things, these things that I track back to this divergence when I was 10. You know, because if he hadn't come into my room, if that hadn't have happened, you know, I think I probably wouldn't have lost so much focus at school. And but had I not been stabbed, I certainly wouldn't have found my way to writing. So you have all these things that, like, Patch goes through. You know, he finds out he's a really gifted artist only because he has to paint Grace, you know. And so he finds his way to, probably he's a kid that would never have found his way into art. Like, I went to a rubbish school in London, and I never would have found my way to writing a book because it just didn't feel like it was an option for someone like me. So, and that's what I find interesting about childhood trauma, and you know, and what comes out of it.
And you talked about how the therapists that you kind of got you into writing.
It was a book, actually. It was a book that I borrowed from the library. It was a self-help book.
Okay.
And that talked about a therapeutic exercise where you take the traumatic incident and you write about it. but you change the people involved to fictional characters. You change the ending to something you can control, and you change the location to the last place you were happy. So, because even back then I couldn't talk to someone about it, so I went into the library to get a book, and the library was like my place that I went to when I was a kid because my mum was working 2 jobs and I didn't like to go home to an empty house when I was like really small. So I'd go and sit in the library. So the library was like my safe place.
Yeah. Well, I hate that you went through all that, but it's just that the way you write about it is just so beautiful. I wish.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'd be able to do it. Like, would I be able to identify with a patch on the level that I do without having gone through it? I don't know. I
This
don't
is
think so.
Yeah, and just a quick little aside, I love the names of your characters, Patch and Saint and
Mhm.
Duchess. They really do stick with you.
Yeah, they do, and they're kind of named like that because they'd rather disappear. Like I referenced when I was talking about Duchess, it was the Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue, Boy Called Sue, something like that. And you have to grow up tougher, if you have a name like that, because you're gonna get picked on. And mine was less about being picked on and more about just being looked at, and being the focus of something. And they're also memorable, which
Yeah,
I really like.
me
That is
too.
nice.
We listened to that. My daughter loves that song. We listened to it on the way up to Massachusetts.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Johnny Cash fan.
Yeah.
Me too. My 13-year-old son has a broken arm right now, and he broke it like 11:30 at night. This is summer for,
Okay.
he broke it 11:30 at night riding a bike, and he had to wait until the morning before we could go. We went to get it like splinted, but
Yeah.
I thinking about him when you had said that, and it was hard to make it through that night and just have to wait.
Yeah. It's long and difficult, and I think I've forgotten most of it, which is nice.
Yeah.
Right.
I just haven't slept well since then, which is really annoying. Like I've never been able to get on top of it, no matter what I do, and it frustrates me because it feels like a failing kind of, like a part of me is still 10 years old, and I just can't. Like, and the more I worry about it and think about it, the more wide awake I am, and the more trouble I have sleeping.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, when you mentioned your writing style, kind of writing things out of order, and when, of course, we get to talk about the end, seeing how everything comes together, which is so beautiful. What is that like to write where you have all these moving pieces, they need to meet in the middle, you have to woo the reader to be convinced and also to doubt things. Like there was times where I doubted as well that Grace was real or not. Um, I don't know if you have a secret of how you do that, but do you write things out of order and still knowing where everything needs to go?
Yeah,
Or
kind of, yeah. So I know that where I know roughly where every scene will end up. So if I start writing something, I know that it will be. So if I'm writing Patch and the Prison Break, I know it's going to come in part 5, and I know roughly the year that it's going to be in. So it's not totally blind, but just
Mhm.
when I'm writing, it might come way before, Patch has been arrested or has even started robbing banks or anything like that. I just feel my way through it and end up with lots of different pieces and a book that is way too long, but it's only, and then you put it together and begin to cut it back, and when you begin cutting back, that's when the pace kind of reveals itself, and I always knew that it would be peaks and troughs with the way the book is paced, because that's how life is, it can't all be wild action, and never going to write a book like that, but I knew that it would start with something really frightening, and and then the interesting bits for me as a writer is when the pace dips, and you see the town going on, and then Patch comes back and sees, he's been gone for almost a year, and sees that most things are still the same, and it's just life just goes on no matter what is happening, and I think that's quite tough for someone to take, when they've been through this horrible thing, and then he comes back and sees Misty outside the movie theater, and they have this moment where they meet in the middle of the street, and you think about just how different their past years have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something I think about a lot, you've talked about going to a bad school when you were younger, that you were not a great student. But the way you write to me feels like you're a Harvard educated poet. I mean, you write so beautifully.
Thank you.
Is that just does that just come naturally to you? Did you take classes, or how would you even categorize how you write? Because it's very, I mean, I read a lot of books, 200 books a year. You have a very unique style, and it's very, I mean, I could read all of those books and read it and go, okay, this is a Chris Whitaker book just by the way you write. How did you learn that, or was it just sort of a
No,
gift?
I think probably because I didn't learn it that you'd be able to identify it. That's
Mm.
what I think. Like it just no, I did really badly at school and left without any real qualifications and no creative writing courses, nothing like that. And I toy with the idea of doing one now, like just joining a creative writing course
Don't
just
do
to,
anything. Don't change.
yeah, I know my agent says that it might mess up my rhythm or something, but like technically I would like to learn, I would like to know more than I do. And it's very like gut feeling and with regard to, the prose and things, it just is what comes out. When when I look at a picture, if you ask me to describe it and I had to write down what I see, it would be, you know, the kind of the detail, that maybe you would miss on this if you just looked at something on a surface level, and then if you dig slightly deeper, that's where kind of I am, when I'm writing. That's what I feel. So if Patch and Misty are hiking together, I'll want to know everything about where they're hiking. What can they hear? What can they smell? What does it look like? What does it feel like underfoot? What are they treading down? What plants are growing in 1987 or something in this place? I need to know all of that, what type of rock it is. And then once you get so much detail, then you begin to cut it back. And what you're left with is gives you a good sense of where they are, I think. But it's just feeling, really. It has to feel right, like a gut feeling.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would like to go to Harvard though. I did go, I went and walked around it when I was doing, because
Yeah.
Misty goes to Harvard, and I did an event at the Harvard bookstore, so I got to go and walk around and take photos of places that I had described in the book that I'd never seen before, which was
Oh, I
really
can
Yeah,
imagine.
I actually went to the Harvard bookstore in April, and there's a right around there, there's wild turkeys that just roam around the
yeah.
street.
I saw loads of signs. I saw loads of signs about wild turkeys, and I really wanted to see one, but I didn't.
I was like, and I didn't see the sign, but I'm like, I was with a friend of mine, Meredith, who you signed a
Yeah,
book for me. And it's like, there are wild turkeys roaming around downtown Boston.
yeah, but why? Why are they there? What are they doing?
I would love to know.
Yeah, me
What you
No,
too.
guys think about it?
that is
Yeah.
very strange.
It
Mm.
is strange.
We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll let you know.
Will do. We'll
Yeah.
Google and find out.
I wanted to address, we have a couple questions that others have asked. One of the Percy Howell, I think, has asked, she said she set up and to finish the book, loved it, but wanted to know, how did Toombs get determined not guilty from the letter? What did the letter say?
The letter told the truth. The letter told, the truth about everything, and so that they found out what had happened to Callie through that. They didn't. Yeah. So it was Nick's kind of parting shot, because he couldn't do it until after he thought that Toombs was dead,
Mhm.
because he wouldn't betray him in life, but he wanted him to be exonerated, or at least wanted someone to know what kind of man he was, and he wanted that person to be sane, and that was really tough to write, actually. And yeah, and because I really liked those characters, I really liked Nick's, throughout the book. I really, really liked him, and loads of people thought that it might have been him. People that message me on Instagram and things like that have messaged to say that they think that like when they're halfway through, that they're sure that he's done something wrong. And he kind of has in some ways, to do with Callie and the way that he's handled it. But his heart is in the right place.
Um, well, let's talk about the ending. The neat thing about this book is that it took place over decades where there was not the internet.
Mhm.
Whereas now Patch would have probably been holed up in a library searching all the missing girls and going through them one by one, but wasn't that easy then. So
Mhm.
is it more fun to write and show how to solve a mystery in a time of pre-internet days? Is it more difficult?
Yeah,
You
it's way
probably feel
more
your
fun.
own frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I much prefer it, and And I tend to set the books like, and certainly there's no social media in my books. And yeah, and I don't know if it's just because when I grew up and I feel like closely connected to that time, and it's a time that my kids would probably find horrifying and also fascinating to read about because they can't comprehend of a world without it. But in some ways it was simpler. In other ways, it's a lot harder to find a missing person, but there's something almost romantic about the way Patch goes about it, you know, and about mailing money to missing person charities and things like that, and just the way he travels around, you know, and it was a really interesting time to set the book as well, you know, to begin it in 1975, because I knew that Roe versus Wade would be a factor in the book, you know, and Saint's story and abortion would be, and I can never talk about it. And it was the theme of the book, you know, that was raised really early on, talking about abortion. And it was also something that we knew we'd never be able to talk about in the PR and things like that because it's a massive spoiler. But now you can in book clubs. And yeah, it was just, it felt right. It felt right to set it there.
I know that was a wonderful time to grow up for sure.
Yeah, how old are you, Chris?
I'm 42.
42.
Yes, I was born in 1981, so
I was born in 75. There's a lot of books set, but it's usually serial killer books that are set in 1975. I was raised during in the Wild West. So this is kind of funny. But I would love to talk a little bit about your tour, because I was just blown away hearing about you going to Aspen, then Houston, then back to Ireland and
yes.
Washington. What can you kind of tell us what your wacky life has been like the last month? And do you have any stories to tell?
Oh, endless fascinating stories, and landing in Aspen was like the most interesting because I got to Denver and then I had to sit on the runway for like hours because there was a big storm in front of the mountain and they couldn't fly through it. And then we did go to fly and they couldn't land, so they were circling round and round. And then I got to Aspen and it was just the most beautiful place. It's so beautiful, but also kind of hard to breathe, which was weird. You know, like just at first, like just getting used
really feel out of shape.
Yeah, I did really badly, and I think jet lag on top of that, was tough. And then I did a couple of events with Jenna, and Jenna showed me messages that she had exchanged with Oprah about the book, which was like,
my gosh,
really, like mad, like just on her phone. And that was really weird because they were really like blow by blow, like, you know, talking about plot points, and Oprah was talking like, I can't believe Saint has done this and can't believe Patch has done XYZ. So it wasn't just like oh, I'll read it. This was like, you know, like a live commentary from Oprah, which was just the weirdest thing. Yeah, the weirdest thing. And then Jenna said that her dad had read it, and her sister and her husband, and I thought her dad, the president, her dad was really weird. Yeah, and then I found out that Bill Clinton had read We Begin at the End. So I'm like, yeah, 2 presidents down. So which is just, it's the most strange thing for someone like me, you know, like my background, and just to have an ex-president read your book is,
we call that the American dream.
Yeah. And I got like the most starstruck I've been, like of all of these, and like all my author heroes have messaged and stuff like that. But do you remember the show The OC?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Summer was Rachel Bilson posted just a picture of the book the other day, and I was like, I grew up watching the OC. This is just too cool. So
I love that she was the one that you were like, okay. I mean, Oprah presidents, but if it's her, but
I know, it's so funny, isn't it? It's so funny. It's just because I remember that show so well when I was younger. And I remember Summer and really liking Summer and thinking the character was really cool. So that was strange. And then Jodie Picoult. Am I saying that right? Picoult?
We think so.
Yeah, we know.
I know. Yes, I was sitting by the pool in San Diego waiting to do my event, and my phone pinged, and it was a message from Jodie saying, and it said, "Hi Chris, I'm an author too." And I just like, I wouldn't know. I know, and it was so lovely. And she had read the book, and yeah, so that was really cool. And just and seeing everything really, you know, just traveling around America and seeing everything from the sky was really cool. And seeing some of the things that I described, like Boston, like that was really amazing. And then I went from there. I didn't really get jet lag until I did the San Diego to Boston leg, and I think it was too many time zones.
Yeah.
So I left in the morning and somehow traveled for like 12 hours, but landed in the morning.
Yeah.
So
Right, you
like, I was
time
ready
travel,
yeah.
basically.
And then I had to do Irish like breakfast TV, like live TV, and I was, yeah, thank God for the makeup lady. Like, she ran out on these bags, she ran out of makeup.
Oh my gosh.
And so I did that and launched the book in Ireland, and it was a bestseller in Ireland. And then I was out for dinner and my phone rang to tell me, because we were all waiting to see if it would make the bestseller list. And I was really crossing my fingers like that we'd hit. I secretly hoped that we'd get number 10, you know, because We Begin at the End started at number 14, and you need top 15 to be a bestseller. And then they said it was number 2, and it was like just the wildest, yeah, most amazing.
I think it's Fabled helped with that.
Yes.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Otherwise, it would have been, yeah, it would have been
Not
10.
Jenna,
In
not
fact,
Oprah.
No, it's us. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I think it's because this, you know, again, I read a lot of books, and there tends to be a lot of repetition in books.
Mhm.
But there's something about your books that are just so unique, and I love that it's, when you're trying to describe it, it's, well, it's a serial killer book, and love and friendship and you know, literary, and there's so many things that is just wrapped up in a beautiful story. And I think, you know, authors, readers, everyone, and presidents and Oprah can really appreciate that.
Yeah, I like a book like that. That's hard to describe. Like, I remember trying to pitch Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow to my dad, and I really struggled with it. And I said, it's got some computer games in it. He was like, I'm not going to read that then. I was like, no, I've messed it up. It's a love story, but it's not really a love story. It's a book about friendship, and he eventually read it and loved it. Like, everyone loves it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something in those books, I think.
It's true. Well, we just adore you, and it's so easy to cheer you on, and just to see so much of a redemption story in your own life through your books. And I know that so many of them have touched our readers and us, and so it's such a privilege to host you for this book club and continue to watch you soar. I can't wait to see the pilot whenever it comes out.
Me too.
And
Mhm.
say, oh yes, he told me about this. He told me about this pilot.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
you were
cool.
there when I first read it.
That's right. We are going to introduce our next two picks, if you don't mind, for about 20 seconds or so, sticking around, Chris. And I made a mistake when I said that the next one next week is a lunch meeting. That is not correct. It is at 7 p.m. Yes. Our communications manager texted me and she was like, no. And I was like, oh, oops. Okay. So I'm so glad to correct myself on that. But in the chat, I'm going to post all the links for you to sign up, and I'll let Elizabeth introduce our next two books.
Yes, so next Tuesday, we're going to be talking to Annabelle Monahan about her great summer romance called Summer Romance. We love Annabelle Monahan. She writes romance. I don't read a lot of romance books, but hers really do kind of speak to me. And so it's quite a departure from All the Colors of the Dark, but it's a wonderful, wonderful story. We hope you join us then. And then in August, we will be talking to Liz Moore about her fantastic book, The God of the Woods, which, Chris, I really want you to read. That's Tuesday, August the 13th. I was telling you at Unlikely Story, your book and The God of the Woods were my two favorite summer books. And I'm hearing that a lot from a lot of people. So definitely check that out. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for your time. And again, everyone will get this as a recording tomorrow in case you want to watch it again or get anything that you missed. Truly appreciate everyone. And Chris, thank you so much. We are cheering you on.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Good to see you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.